You know, it's a strange thing, isn't it? How someone can live in your mind without ever asking to stay there. How their presence echoes in your thoughts long after their footsteps have vanished. Maybe it's not love. Maybe it's something deeper. The universe using them as a mirror to show you something about yourself. You know, it begins so softly that you almost don't notice it. One day, you're simply moving through your life, doing ordinary things, folding laundry, answering a message, making coffee, and then, suddenly, they appear in your mind, like a quiet whisper of memory. Not loud enough to interrupt, but powerful enough to change the air around you. And before you even realize it, thinking about them becomes a rhythm your mind can't seem to stop dancing to. It's curious how that happens, isn't it? You tell yourself it's nothing. You tell yourself it's just a thought. But thoughts have weight. Thoughts carry energy. They have the strange ability to bend your reality, to shape the way you see the world. A person can be miles away, gone from your life completely, and yet they still walk through your mind as if they own a room there. You start to wonder if it's love or maybe unfinished energy. You wonder why their face arrives when your heart is quiet, or why their name seems to breathe itself into your solitude. At first you try to ignore it. You distract yourself with tasks, with conversation, with noise. But there's something about that image, that thought of them, that keeps returning, like a tide that refuses to rest. And deep down you sense that it's not about them at all. It's about something within you that they awakened. They stirred a frequency that your soul hadn't felt in a long time. And now it keeps echoing. Not because they're calling you, but because life is, every thought carries vibration. Every emotion radiates through the unseen field of energy that surrounds you. And when you think of someone repeatedly, it's not simply nostalgia or habit, it's resonance. The mind vibrates with what it recognizes, and the heart connects to what feels familiar. That's why the people who linger in your thoughts are never random. They are the energetic reflections of your deepest lessons, your silent teachers, your mirrors. You see, when someone enters your mind again and again, it's often because they carry the same frequency that a part of you still vibrates with. Maybe they remind you of a time when you were more open, more hopeful, more unguarded. Or maybe they remind you of a wound, something you've yet to fully understand, something that still aches quietly beneath the surface. In that way, they become a mirror for the parts of your soul that are still waiting to be seen. The mind doesn't fixate on people because it's obsessed. It fixates because it's trying to understand. It's trying to decode what that person represents in your inner world. Maybe their energy felt like safety, or maybe it felt like chaos, but either way, it left an imprint. And your consciousness, being the compassionate explorer it is, keeps returning to that imprint. Not to suffer, but to comprehend, to bring light to what was once shadow. Sometimes it's not even about the person at all. It's about what your soul experienced in their presence. The laughter, the curiosity, the sense of aliveness. You see, we don't think of people as much as we think of how they made us feel. That's the real connection, the invisible thread that ties us. So when they cross your mind, it may be your spirit's way of saying, remember that version of you? The one who felt deeply, who was brave enough to love. But there's something even more profound about this phenomenon. When you repeatedly think of someone, you are, in a sense, sending out a signal. Energy moves in waves, and your thoughts are currents that ripple through existence, sometimes without knowing why. The other person feels it, a sudden memory, a fleeting warmth, an unexplainable thought of you. It's not coincidence. It's resonance across the unseen. Because even when the physical connection has ended, the energetic one continues to hum quietly between you. However, here's the truth that begins to unfold when you look deeper. The more you chase the thought, the further peace slips away. Because peace doesn't come from controlling who enters your mind. It comes from understanding why. The mind, in its nature, wants resolution. It replays what it hasn't accepted. It revisits what it hasn't forgiven, and it clings to what it hasn't yet learned from. So when someone lives in your thoughts, perhaps it's not because you can't let them go, but because your soul is still processing the lesson their presence delivered. It's like standing before a mirror, trying to see past your reflection. You realize that the image staring back at you, though shaped by another, is in truth your own. They are the mirror that revealed how much you could love, or how deeply you could hurt, or how fiercely you could hope. And maybe that's why you can't stop thinking about them, because through them you met a version of yourself you had long forgotten existed. And so the journey inward begins, the one where you stop trying to silence the thought and start listening to it. You ask gently, what is this person showing me about me? You might find that it's not longing you feel, but awakening, not desire, but recognition. Because the people who echo in your mind the loudest are often the ones whose energy awakened something sacred, something that now calls for your own attention. Sometimes it's not about missing someone, but about missing the connection to life that they once represented. They may have been the doorway to your vulnerability, or the mirror reflecting your need for belonging. And until you return to that place within yourself, until you fill that absence with your own awareness, your thoughts will continue to reach for them, like roots searching for water. That's why the real practice isn't forgetting, it's integrating. To honor what their presence brought into your life without needing to relive it. To say, you were a chapter, not the entire book. When you can do that, their image begins to soften. The thought no longer grips you, it simply passes through like a cloud across the sky, acknowledged but not held. And yet, in that letting go, something extraordinary happens. The energy that was once tied up in thinking about them becomes available again. Available for your growth, your healing, your self-discovery. Because energy never disappears, it only transforms. The more awareness you bring to the thought, the more it shifts from fixation into wisdom. You begin to see how every person who has ever occupied your thoughts was never truly separate from you. They were part of your unfolding, mirrors of your becoming. They came into your awareness so you could remember a truth you had forgotten. Perhaps the truth that love is not about possession, but presence, that connection is not about holding on, but understanding. And so when the thought returns, as it inevitably will, you no longer meet it with resistance or guilt, you meet it with curiosity. You allow it to teach you again if it must. You understand that to think of someone is not to regress, but to revisit a classroom of the soul. And in that gentle acceptance, the obsession transforms into understanding. The attachment becomes insight. Eventually, what was once a restless fixation becomes a quiet awareness. You still remember them, yes, but now without ache, without grasping, without the illusion that something is missing. Because in the end, you realize they never truly left. They simply awakened a part of you that you are now ready to meet, directly, compassionately, without the need for their presence to guide you there. And in that moment of realization, the energy dissolves, the habit fades. You no longer think of them out of longing, but out of gratitude. Gratitude for the way they helped you see yourself, for the way they mirrored your depth, your vulnerability, your hunger for meaning. You realize that thinking of them was never a curse. It was a bridge that carried you from dependence to awareness, from projection to peace. Because when your heart finally learns the lesson, the mind no longer needs to replay it. The person becomes a memory of light, not pain. Their name becomes a symbol of growth, not loss. And what once felt like an endless cycle of thought turns into a single, silent understanding. That love, in all its forms, was always leading you back home, back to the stillness within you, back to the awareness that every reflection, every attachment, every thought of another was, in truth, a whisper from your own soul, calling you to remember who you are. There comes a moment when you begin to understand that every person who touches your life leaves a vibration behind, an invisible fingerprint upon the fabric of your being. It's not something you can see, and rarely can you explain it, but you can feel it. Sometimes it's a warmth, sometimes an ache, sometimes a question that has no words. That's what we call an emotional imprint, a residue of shared energy, a whisper of connection that lingers long after the story has ended. The heart, you see, is not made of stone, it's made of memory. Every experience it holds creates ripples that travel far beyond the moment itself. When someone comes into your life and awakens a deep emotion, whether joy or sorrow, that emotion does not simply disappear. It settles into the subconscious, shaping how you move, how you speak, how you love, and how you trust. It becomes part of your inner landscape. And so, when that person leaves, the mind keeps returning to the place where the imprint was left, not out of obsession, but out of the desire to understand what it all meant. The more deeply someone has stirred your soul, the longer that vibration stays. That's why you can still think about someone years later, even when logic tells you that you've moved on. Because healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means learning how to live with the imprint without letting it define you. These emotional echoes are not punishments, they are lessons. They are your spirit's way of helping you integrate what that person came to awaken within you. Sometimes the mind replays their words not because you miss them, but because you are still decoding the truth they carried. Sometimes you revisit the memories not because you're trapped, but because your heart is still translating the language of that experience into wisdom. The universe doesn't waste connections. Even the painful ones serve a sacred purpose. Every person is a teacher disguised as a memory, and every memory carries a message waiting to be heard. And this brings you into contact with a deeper truth, that not all energy between souls completes its cycle immediately. There are encounters that leave unfinished chords vibrating in the background of your life. You sense it when you hear a certain song or visit a place that reminds you of them. It's not just nostalgia, it's unfinished energy, the kind that remains when something was left unsaid, when forgiveness was withheld, when love was not fully expressed or fully received. The human spirit seeks resolution. It seeks harmony. When something remains unresolved, your mind becomes the meeting place where that energy continues to swirl. You might not consciously understand why they appear in your thoughts, but somewhere deep inside, your soul is still holding a conversation that was never completed. It's trying to rewrite the ending, to fill the silence with meaning. You might think you need to reach out to them, to speak, to close the chapter, but sometimes closure doesn't come through words. It comes through awareness. It comes through realizing that not every story is meant to end with clarity. Some are meant to end with peace. You can't force energy to resolve through control. You can only dissolve it through understanding. That's the beauty of inner work. It allows you to complete the conversation within yourself, to say what was never said, to forgive what was never apologized for, to bless what once broke you. In doing so, you release the emotional current that has kept you entangled. You no longer need the person to show up and give you peace. You become the peace. You take back the power that was once scattered across memories and unanswered questions, and you anchor it firmly in the present moment. You begin to see that closure is not about forgetting someone, but about no longer needing their participation in your healing. The story may remain unfinished in words, but it becomes complete in wisdom. The lesson remains, but the longing fades. The energy that once bound you to the past transforms into light that guides you forward. And then, slowly, you feel the magnetic pull begin to loosen, because every thought, every memory, every attachment is a form of energy exchange. When you think of someone constantly, you are sending waves toward them, waves that sometimes return, sometimes dissolve. It's the invisible dance of human connection. We are all transmitters, all receivers, all moving through this vast sea of unseen communication. When you think of someone with intensity, that energy travels. It's why sometimes they'll think of you at the same moment or dream of you after weeks of silence. Energy doesn't lie, and neither does resonance. But this realization is not meant to make you chase the unseen. It's meant to make you conscious of what you are sending out. If your thoughts are heavy with longing, that's the vibration that travels. If they are filled with resentment, that too ripples through the field. But when your thoughts are grounded in gratitude, when you think of them not as a wound but as a teacher, the energy becomes clean, gentle, and liberating. You stop feeding the old attachment and instead you begin to harmonize it. It's in that awareness that true mastery of the mind begins, the understanding that every thought is an offering. You can offer resistance or you can offer peace. You can send out confusion or you can send out clarity. The energy you extend shapes not only your connection to others, but the quality of your inner life. So when you find yourself thinking of them again, pause and ask, what vibration am I feeding? The universe doesn't measure your worth by how often you think of someone. It reflects back the energy with which you do. When your thoughts are born from love and not lack, they no longer drain you, they renew you, because love in its purest form is never about possession, it's about expansion. It's not about holding on, it's about allowing. And so you learn gradually that your thoughts are creative forces. They build bridges or they build walls. They can either keep you tied to what was or open you to what is yet to come. The magnetic mind is powerful, but it's not meant to imprison you in old stories. It's meant to remind you of your ability to direct your energy with intention. This is why letting go is not about erasing the memory of someone. It's about shifting the energy of your connection from dependence to understanding, from attachment to awareness. It's about reclaiming your focus and realizing that the same energy you once used to think of them can now be used to create, to heal, to grow. When that realization dawns, a quiet peace fills your being. You no longer chase closure, you become it. You no longer try to send messages through the air. You simply radiate clarity. And when your energy changes, the world around you changes with it. Because in truth, no connection is ever truly lost. It simply transforms. The people who once occupied your mind do not vanish. They evolve into wisdom, into lessons, into gentle reminders of your own capacity to feel deeply. What once was unfinished becomes complete in understanding. And maybe that's the secret, that the people you can't stop thinking about were never meant to be permanent fixtures in your life. They were meant to stir your soul, to awaken your awareness, to teach you how to love without attachment. They were never meant to stay, only to open the door within you that leads to deeper consciousness. So when the thoughts arise again, don't run from them. Don't label them as weakness. Let them pass through you like wind through leaves. Notice, but not grasped. They are simply reminders that you are alive, that your heart has known depth, that your energy has touched another's. And when you can bless that truth, bless them for what they brought. Bless yourself for what you've learned. The current begins to settle. The energy that once circled endlessly begins to find stillness. The magnetic pull that once drew your attention outward now redirects inward, back to the center of your being. And there, in that stillness, you discover the quiet magic of release. Not the kind that forgets, but the kind that remembers with peace. The kind that knows that every thought, every attachment, every imprint was never meant to hold you captive, but to teach you freedom. There's a quiet power that lives inside the unseen world. The realm where thoughts become currents and emotions become waves. Every time you think of someone, you're not simply remembering them. You're sending energy outward, like ripples from a stone dropped into still water. It's a movement of consciousness, an invisible language that exists between souls. You might not hear it, you might not see it, but it's there, shaping how you feel, drawing experiences toward you, and sometimes without realizing it, keeping you tied to energies that no longer serve your peace. The more often your thoughts orbit around a person, the more you strengthen that thread between you. It's like tuning an instrument. The more you play the same note, the louder it resonates. But what you must remember is this: the universe doesn't respond to the person you think about. It responds to the vibration with which you think. If your thoughts are rooted in pain, they echo pain. If they are rooted in love, they echo love. And if they are rooted in understanding, they echo freedom. It's easy to become lost in this invisible exchange, to wonder if they feel you too, if their thoughts drift your way when the night is quiet. And sometimes they do. Sometimes two souls hum on the same frequency for a while, long after they've walked separate roads. But that too is a lesson, to understand that just because energy moves between you doesn't mean it's meant to bind you. The universe allows connection so that both may awaken, not so either may cling. And yet, so many become caught in the illusion of control. We believe that by sheer willpower, we can decide who stays in our mind and who leaves. We try to block the thought, suppress it, bury it, as if the mind were a stubborn garden we could prune at will. But the mind is not a machine. It's a living field. You cannot control the wind that passes through it. You can only choose how deeply you breathe it in. The more you fight a thought, the stronger it becomes. Resistance feeds attention. The energy you spend trying to silence a name only makes its echo louder. The paradox is this: what you resist persists, what you allow transforms. So the art is not in trying to erase someone from your mind, but in learning to observe the thought without judgment, to see it come and go as naturally as the tide. The thought of them arises, and you do not panic. You do not shame yourself for remembering. You simply watch it. You say quietly within, "Ah, here it is again." And you breathe. You neither feed it nor fight it. You just let it move. When you do this, something extraordinary begins to happen. The thought that once held so much charge starts to lose its grip. The emotional voltage decreases. You no longer react to their memory, you simply witness it. It becomes just another cloud in the sky of your awareness. You realize that the thought itself was never the problem. Your identification with it was. You were never trapped by them. You were trapped by the story your mind told each time their image appeared. Freedom begins in that stillness, in the moment you stop trying to manage your thoughts like wild horses, and instead learn to stand quietly among them. You become the watcher, the witness, the open sky. And what a revelation it is to know that you are not the storm, but the awareness that sees it passing. From that awareness, liberation begins to unfold. Awareness is not passive. It is transformative. When you shine the light of awareness on a thought, it cannot remain in the shadows of unconscious attachment. The simple act of observing it without reaction allows it to dissolve, just as darkness cannot survive where light is present. Awareness brings understanding, and understanding ends obsession. When you become aware of the patterns of your mind, when you notice that same person appearing again and again, instead of judging yourself, you become curious. You ask gently, "What is this thought showing me?" Perhaps it's revealing a wound that still needs healing. Perhaps it's pointing toward forgiveness, or reminding you of a love you never gave yourself. Every recurring thought carries a message, and when you stop pushing it away, you finally hear it. Through awareness, you learn to separate the person from the pattern. You realize that they are not the source of your peace or your pain. They were merely the mirror reflecting it. The attachment wasn't to them, it was to what you experienced through them. Awareness is the hand that untangles that knot. It allows you to take your power back, to stop outsourcing your peace to the presence or absence of another human being. In this way, awareness becomes the bridge between the mind and the soul. It takes you from unconscious reaction to conscious reflection. It transforms the chaos of emotion into clarity. It shows you that nothing in your inner world can be healed through suppression, only through presence. And so when the thought of them arises again, as it will, you no longer see it as proof of weakness. but as an invitation to return to awareness. And in that sacred awareness, something beautiful begins to unfold: understanding. You begin to see how every person who lingers in your thoughts is not a curse, but a compass. They point you toward the parts of yourself that are asking to be loved, the parts that still need integration. Awareness is the language of your higher self, translating pain into wisdom. When you stop running from your mind, you begin to listen to your heart, and what the heart often whispers is simple: you are not missing them. You are missing the connection to yourself that you once felt through them. This realization humbles you. It softens you. Because suddenly, instead of judging yourself for thinking about them, you thank the thought for showing you what still needs your care. You begin to see that the mind is not your enemy, and the memory is not your punishment. Both are tools guiding you toward a deeper wholeness. And then, when awareness deepens even further, a subtle shift takes place. You stop asking, "Why can't I stop thinking about them?" and start asking, "What within me still needs my attention?" This question changes everything. Because now, the power is no longer in their hands, it's in yours. Awareness teaches you to stop seeking closure from others and begin offering it to yourself. It reminds you that the true resolution is not in changing what was, but in accepting what is. It's in forgiving the story, the self, the soul that once didn't know better. And as you do, the grip of their memory softens. The thread begins to dissolve, not through force, but through compassion. You start to notice that your energy feels lighter. You're no longer pulled outward toward them, but inward toward your own center. The same thought that once drained you now passes through you like sunlight through open hands. That is the quiet power of awareness. It doesn't fight what is, it transforms it by understanding. And as you stand there in that peace, you realize that awareness and love are not separate. True awareness is love in its highest form, not sentimental, not dependent, but clear, patient, and free. It allows everything to be as it is, including the thoughts that once troubled you. It watches them come, it watches them go, and it remains unshaken. That is the ultimate liberation. Not to stop thinking about someone, but to think of them without losing yourself, to remember without grasping, to reflect without pain. When awareness becomes your constant companion, every thought becomes sacred, even the ones that hurt, because you see now that pain is not the enemy, it's the teacher that led you to presence. Awareness makes every moment holy, every thought an opportunity to awaken. And so, you no longer fear your mind, you trust it. You trust that every person who crosses your thoughts does so for a reason. You no longer need to chase them away or hold them close. You simply meet them with awareness, and in that meeting, you find peace. Because awareness, when cultivated, turns even longing into light. It shows you that nothing truly belongs to you except your own consciousness. That every attachment, every memory, every name that echoes through your being is ultimately leading you back to yourself, back to stillness, back to the divine quiet that waits beneath all thought. And when you arrive there, you realize something profound. You were never trying to stop thinking about them. You were trying to stop suffering through the thought. And awareness did exactly that, not by erasing them, but by awakening you. It's strange, isn't it, how certain people seem to take up residence in your thoughts, not as guests, but as quiet constants that linger behind every conversation, every silence, every breath. Sometimes it's not even about love or longing. It's about energy, the way a soul once touched yours and left a trace so fine that it almost feels like your own heartbeat is echoing their memory. You find yourself wondering why their name comes to mind in the quiet hours of night, or why their presence seems to breathe inside moments you thought belonged to you alone. The truth is, when someone keeps appearing in your thoughts, something within you is trying to speak. It's not always about them. It's about what their memory awakens inside of you. Because thoughts don't cling without reason. The mind only returns to what the heart has not yet understood. That's the subtle thing about attachment. It's rarely about the person and almost always about what they represented to you. Maybe they mirrored your softness when the world told you to be hard. Maybe they saw something sacred in you that you could not yet see in yourself. Or perhaps they represented the ache of something unfinished, the echo of a story that your soul still longs to complete. Whatever the reason, when your thoughts keep returning to a person, you're being called, not to chase, not to analyze, but to listen. Because behind that obsession, behind that uninvited recollection, lies a deeper invitation. The universe is never random in the way it draws our attention. Every recurring thought is a signal pointing you inward to the part of you that's still searching for closure, understanding, or peace. We live in a culture that tells us to move on quickly, to delete, block, and forget. But forgetting is not healing, it's oppression dressed in discipline. Healing asks for presence. It asks you to walk slowly into the memories that still live in you and see what remains unfinished there. And when you do, you begin to realize that thinking of someone often is not a curse, but a conversation your soul is trying to have with itself. The mind replays what the heart refuses to release. That's why it feels so cyclical. Why you can go days feeling strong and detached, and then suddenly, without warning, their face flashes before your mind again. You think you've regressed, but in truth, you've been invited deeper. There's another layer of understanding waiting beneath the one you thought you'd mastered. Because healing doesn't happen in straight lines. It spirals. Each time you circle back, you see the same memory, but from a higher place within yourself. And as you start to pay attention, something shifts quietly. You notice that the pain attached to their name begins to loosen. You no longer ache. You observe. You no longer long. You understand. You start to see how this person was never meant to stay, but to awaken a part of you that was sleeping. They were a mirror, not a home. They came not to complete you, but to reveal the depth of what was already there. In that understanding, a profound peace begins to emerge, because you see, the energy that once felt like longing begins to transmute into wisdom. The more you observe your own attachment, the more you realize how powerful the human mind is in creating worlds, how easily we project our unfinished desires onto people and then confuse that projection for love. Love is not the obsession that consumes you. Love is the awareness that liberates you. When you can think of someone and no longer feel owned by that thought, you have reclaimed your energy. You stepped out of the prison of emotional repetition and into the sanctuary of self-awareness. Still, there's something else that happens, something quieter but far more transformative. When you allow yourself to observe the pattern without resistance, you begin to sense that the person you keep thinking about may not even be the same person anymore, not in the way your memory paints them. The human mind is a remarkable artist. It doesn't remember people as they were, but as it needed them to be. We remember not their reality, but our story about them. And when we start to awaken, we begin to see through that illusion. We begin to see that what we were attached to was never the person, but the part of ourselves that felt seen through them. That's the hidden beauty of obsession. It is a mirror in disguise. It tells you what your soul is still craving. If you think of someone because they made you feel safe, it's not them you're missing, it's the feeling of safety itself. If you think of someone because they inspired you, it's not their presence you need, but the awakening of your own inspiration. Every recurring thought points back to something within you that is waiting to be reclaimed. The external is simply a reminder, a reflection of your inner landscape. And so the next time you find yourself lost in thought about someone again, instead of resisting it, ask gently, what is this thought trying to teach me? Notice where in your body you feel it. Is it tightness, warmth, heaviness, lightness? Because emotions live in the body long before the mind translates them into meaning. Let the memory unfold like a wave, but stay centered in the awareness that watches it. Observe without clinging, love without owning, release without resentment. When you can do that, something miraculous happens. The energy that was once bound to that person begins to return to you. Your focus, your creativity, your joy, they flow back like rivers returning to their source. You realize that the mind is not your enemy, it's your compass. It keeps returning to the same faces, not to torment you, but to show you where you left a part of yourself. Once you retrieve that part, the repetition stops naturally. You no longer have to force forgetting. It happens on its own, because you've completed the lesson. And this is where transformation quietly blooms. You understand that remembering is not weakness, it's awareness. It's the acknowledgement of your capacity to feel deeply, to connect profoundly, and to learn endlessly through human experience. To think of someone again and again is not a flaw. It's a sign that your soul is alive and responsive. It's proof that you have loved, and that love, in all its forms, whether fulfilled or unreturned, always leaves an imprint of growth. But perhaps the most liberating realization of all is this. When you think about someone repeatedly, and you begin to release the emotional charge tied to that thought, they no longer hold power over you. You've turned memory into meditation. You've turned attachment into understanding. You've transformed longing into light. So when the next wave of thought rises, breathe deeply and say, here it is again. Don't run, don't indulge, just watch, because everything that rises within you rises to be seen, to be accepted, and finally to be set free. That is the art of inner alchemy, turning the heaviness of memory into the lightness of wisdom. There comes a moment, quiet yet unmistakable, when you realize that thinking of someone isn't about them anymore. It's about the energy that still moves through you because of them. It's like hearing an echo long after the voice has gone silent. That's what memory is, a vibration that hasn't yet settled. You can't silence it by force. You can only listen until it fades into understanding. And maybe that's the beginning of maturity. Learning not to run from your thoughts, but to sit with them as you would with a visitor who arrived unexpectedly. You make space, you listen, and you let them leave when their message is complete. You stop asking, why do I keep thinking of this person? And instead whisper, what are these thoughts trying to teach me? Because every recurring thought is like a wave knocking at the shore of your awareness. It won't stop until you learn to receive it. Sometimes what you're really experiencing isn't the presence of another, but the absence of yourself. The parts of you that got entangled in someone else's world, your peace, your joy, your focus, are calling to be returned home. And until they come back, you'll feel the pull of their gravity, like the moon drawing tides. You think it's about missing them, but it's really about missing your own wholeness. When you finally understand this, something begins to shift. You no longer see your thoughts as enemies, but as gentle reminders. You start realizing that not every connection is meant to be kept. Some are meant to awaken. Some people come into your life not to stay, but to break something open within you. They stir emotions you've never met, bring to surface wounds you never addressed, and in doing so, they become the mirror you didn't know you needed. The moment you start seeing them as mirrors, instead of missing pieces, you begin to reclaim your freedom. But freedom doesn't mean forgetting. Freedom means remembering without pain. It means allowing the image of that person to pass through your mind without clinging or resisting. It's understanding that letting go isn't erasing, it's transforming. You no longer need to push away their memory, nor hold on to it like a relic. You simply let it exist, like a leaf floating on a quiet stream. There, but not obstructing the flow. There's a deep tenderness in this process, because as you heal, you start to notice how every thought that once felt heavy begins to soften. The ache loses its sharpness. You find beauty in the very thing that once caused you sorrow. You begin to thank them, not for staying, but for teaching you what presence truly means. Some people love you by leaving. Some people heal you by hurting you. Some people guide you by confusing you. And as paradoxical as it sounds, all of them were exactly what your soul needed to evolve. You see, there's a rhythm to the way life connects us. Every encounter, no matter how brief, carries a purpose. Some souls come to show you how to love. Others come to teach you how to let go. And a rare few come to remind you of your own power by awakening the very parts of you that forgot their strength. These are the ones you'll think about the most. Not because you can't move on, but because your soul recognizes that through them, you were reborn. The beautiful irony is that once you reach this understanding, the thoughts that haunted you no longer have the same hold. You begin to notice longer spaces of silence within yourself, peaceful gaps between memories. The mind becomes less noisy, the heart more still. You realize that peace isn't forgetting the person, but remembering yourself in their absence. It's realizing that your peace doesn't depend on who stayed or who left. It depends on who you became because of what you experienced. And in that calm space, something sacred happens. You begin to love differently, not from need, but from wholeness. You stop trying to hold on to people out of fear, and instead you start cherishing them from freedom. You no longer see connection as ownership, but as alignment. You can love deeply without clinging, you can care without controlling, and you can remember without suffering. This is what it means to evolve, to let love refine you, not define you. When you love from this place, your energy changes. You stop chasing closure from others because you found closure within. You stop replaying old conversations in your mind because your peace is no longer held hostage by what was left unsaid. You begin to understand that some things were never meant to make sense from the mind. They were meant to be felt through the soul. The universe speaks in energy, not explanations. And if you can quiet your mind long enough, you'll begin to feel that the connection still exists, but in a different form, no longer in attachment, but in essence, because energy never disappears, it transforms. The love you once directed towards someone else doesn't vanish when they leave. It simply redirects into creativity, into self-care, into compassion. What once felt like an emotional storm becomes a source of strength, clarity, and peace. You start to understand that thinking of them was never the problem. Attaching meaning to that thought was, once you release the story, the thought becomes light, almost holy. That's the quiet miracle of healing. It turns pain into prayer. What used to make you cry now makes you bow in gratitude. What used to feel like loss now feels like revelation. You realize that this person's presence in your thoughts was simply the soul's way of showing you where love still wanted to grow. They were the seed, you were the soil. And through time, the seed dissolves, but the bloom remains. And perhaps this is what love was always meant to be. Not a possession, not a promise, but a process. A process of remembering who you are through the reflection of another, every thought of them, every moment of yearning, every echo of memory, all of it guided you back to the temple within yourself. So now, when you think of them again, because you will, do it differently. Don't rush to stop the thought. Let it come. Let it stay for a moment, like sunlight resting on your skin. Smile at it, thank it, then let it pass. Because now you know it's not about them. It's about the lesson they carry to you. And one day, you'll realize something profound. The very person who once consumed your thoughts has quietly become a chapter in your story, one you can revisit with peace instead of pain. You'll see how every thought, every memory was a step on the path of your awakening. And you'll whisper with quiet reverence, thank you. Not because they gave you what you wanted, but because they gave you what you needed, the mirror that led you home to yourself. That's the gift hidden beneath the ache. That every thought of another can become an invitation to rediscover yourself. That the energy of love never leaves, it just changes form. And when you stop resisting the flow, when you stop fighting the waves of remembrance, you finally float, you rest, you understand. Because sometimes the people you think about the most are not the ones you're meant to return to. They're the ones who came to awaken you to a truth you had forgotten. That everything you seek in another already lives within you. There comes a time when the heart no longer trembles at the thought of someone, when the memory of them passes through like wind, touching but not lingering. And in that quiet realization, you understand something profound. Healing was never about erasing the thought, but transforming the way it lives inside you. You start to see that your connection to others was never meant to hold you captive, but to awaken you to parts of yourself that only love, in all its beauty and pain, could reveal. For so long, you might have mistaken stillness for emptiness, thinking that if the intensity faded, the meaning did too. But silence after the storm is not absence, it's presence. It's your soul finally resting in its natural rhythm, unburdened by longing, untouched by the noise of what-ifs. It's not forgetting the person, but remembering yourself in their absence. Because true healing is not found in moving on quickly, it's found in moving inward deeply. It's when you can feel their presence within your memory and not be shaken by it, when you can bless the past without trying to resurrect it. And maybe that's what life has been trying to teach you through every person who has stayed and every person who has left. That love is not meant to cage you. It's meant to awaken you. You were never meant to lose yourself inside another. You were meant to find yourself through them. Every time you thought you were breaking, you were actually breaking open. Every tear, every ache, every sleepless night was not punishment, it was purification. The universe doesn't take from you to leave you empty. It clears space so that something truer can take root. You begin to understand that what you called heartbreak was really heart expansion. What you labeled as loss was transformation. You start to see the delicate design hidden inside your own suffering. How every person who crossed your path was not random but divinely placed. Some were there to love you, others to challenge you, and a few to awaken the fire of your self-worth. It's never been about how long they stayed. It's about what they stirred awake within you. As your awareness deepens, you realize that love, in its purest form, never truly ends. It doesn't vanish when people part ways. It simply changes shape. It becomes a prayer, a whisper, a quiet blessing carried through time. You can still wish them well without wishing them back. You can still love them without needing to hold them, because love, when understood fully, is not possession. It is liberation. And in that liberation, a beautiful shift happens. You stop viewing life through the eyes of scarcity, through the belief that someone's departure means something precious has been lost. Instead, you begin to see abundance everywhere. You realize that the love you once sought from another has always been flowing within you, waiting to be recognized. You are no longer a seeker but a source. You no longer crave completion through someone else, because you've tasted the wholeness that was buried beneath your dependency. This is the rebirth that happens quietly, not in grand gestures, but in simple moments, when you can sit in your own company and feel peace, when your thoughts drift toward the past and you smile instead of ache. You see, real strength isn't in closing your heart. It's in keeping it open, even after it's been bruised. It's in believing in love again, not because it never hurt you, but because you finally understand that pain and love are not opposites. They are companions. Pain is love's way of cleansing the heart, of clearing away illusion, so that only truth remains. There is a sacredness in letting go, not the kind that feels like loss, but the kind that feels like release, like unclenching your fists after years of holding on, because holding on was never about love, it was about fear. The fear that without them, you would be incomplete. The fear that your worth was tied to someone else's recognition. But when you finally let go, you discover something miraculous. You were never incomplete. You were never lacking. You were always whole. You just forgot. And when you remember that wholeness, your relationship with everything changes. You no longer chase people to fill a void. You no longer need validation to feel seen. You start walking through life with a quiet confidence, grounded in your own being. You meet others not to find yourself, but to share yourself. You begin to love without conditions, without demands, without the desperate need to be understood. You love because love is your natural state, and you finally come home to it. Then something even more profound unfolds. You stop seeing your life as a series of endings and beginnings. You start seeing it as one continuous flow. Every person who enters or leaves, every joy and every sorrow, is part of the same river guiding you toward greater awareness. There's no bitterness, no resistance, just acceptance. you realize that people don't belong to us, they belong to their own journeys. And when we truly love, we honor that. We stop asking them to stay when life is calling them elsewhere. We bless their path, and in doing so, we free ourselves. Freedom is not forgetting. Freedom is remembering with peace. It's when you can look back without pain, when you can speak their name and feel gratitude instead of grief. You no longer dwell in what could have been, because you trust what is. You understand that everything that has touched your soul has shaped it, even the things that hurt the most, especially the things that hurt the most, because pain is not the opposite of growth, it is the soil from which growth blooms. There's an ancient wisdom that whispers through every heartbreak. The heart breaks to become wider. It breaks to let the light in. Without that breaking, we would live behind walls too thick to feel the depth of love, too afraid to be seen. So if you find yourself remembering someone and feeling the echo of pain, don't rush to silence it. Sit with it, listen, because that echo is the sound of your heart, expanding beyond its old limits. It's proof that you are alive, evolving, awakening. And as you evolve, something extraordinary happens. You stop being afraid of your own emotions. You stop labeling them as good or bad. You start to see that every emotion is just energy moving through you, teaching you something about yourself. The sadness, the nostalgia, the longing, they're not setbacks, they're signals. They're showing you what still needs to be loved within you. Eventually, you reach a place of quiet gratitude for it all, for the love that came, for the love that left, and for the love that remains within you. You see how every experience has carved wisdom into your spirit, how every person has helped you become more compassionate, more open, more you. You understand that life's greatest purpose is not to avoid pain, but to awaken through it, to let every connection, every thought, every heartbreak polish you into clarity. And so you breathe, you stop asking the mind to forget, and instead, you invite the soul to understand. You stop fighting the memories, and instead, you bless them. You begin to live not from resistance, but from reverence, because everything that has ever moved you, every person you've ever thought of, every love that has ever touched you, was never meant to stay forever. It was meant to remind you that you are capable of feeling deeply, loving fully, and rising endlessly. And that is the quiet miracle of being human, that we can think of someone long after they're gone, and instead of pain, feel peace. That we can love without needing to possess, that we can let go and still remain open. For in the end, it's never about holding on or moving on. It's about moving through. And when you move through with awareness, everything, even the memories that once felt heavy, becomes light. That is how the soul heals. Not by forgetting, but by remembering differently. Not by erasing, but by transforming. Until one day, the thought of that person no longer stirs confusion or ache, but quiet gratitude for being the catalyst that brought you back home to yourself. So, in the end, it all comes down to this. Every person who enters your life is both a messenger and a mirror. Some come to teach you tenderness, others to awaken your boundaries, and a few to remind you of who you are when the world forgets to see you. None of them arrive by mistake. Every thought that lingers, every emotion that rises uninvited, is part of your unfolding, the soul's way of asking you to pay attention to what still needs to be understood. You begin to realize that love is not the story of who stays, but of what remains after they're gone. It's the awareness that you can still love deeply without clinging, that you can remember without pain, and that you can release without bitterness. The thoughts that once haunted, you become gentle teachers. The people you once held tightly become silent blessings. And what once felt like loss slowly reveals itself as transformation. Because the truth is, nothing you've ever loved has been wasted. Every feeling, every connection, every memory has been shaping you into someone wiser, softer, and infinitely more awake. What you thought was breaking you was actually opening you. What you thought was the end was simply the beginning. of a deeper relationship, not with them, but with yourself. And when that understanding settles in, peace becomes effortless. You no longer chase closure, you live it. You no longer need to know why things happened as they did. You trust that they unfolded exactly as they must. You stop running from your past and begin walking hand in hand with it, knowing that every chapter, even the painful ones, has led you here to this quiet clarity, to this sacred stillness within. So if a thought of someone returns to you again, don't resist it, smile at it. Let it pass through like sunlight across your skin, because it no longer owns you. It reminds you that you have lived, that you have loved, and that your heart, though once wounded, now beats with wisdom, and that is the real beauty of awakening. When you stop seeing love as something that happens to you and begin to see it as something that flows through you, when every ending becomes a doorway, every memory becomes light, and every thought that once felt heavy becomes just another step leading you home.